Like cooking, everything has a recipe.
A set of instructions to follow in order to gain a certain result.
Music is no different.
Be it ingredients for a dish, a set list for an amazing show,
Or a release strategy for a successful launch.
these are all recipes.
Hi, we're your hosts, Sean.
And I'm Brandon.
Come and join us in our kitchen as we go through the Music Makers Cookbook.
Let's get cooking.
Hello and welcome to the Music Makers Podcast. The podcast where we help independent artists craft recipes for success in the music industry. I just looked over at Brandon and in his face, I'm like, well, it made me stutter. If you're not watching the video podcast, watch this intro.
There was just such an abrupt change. He just goes, "Yep, watch this." Welcome to the. It was like so instantaneous. I wasn't even ready for it.
Well, we were talking about something really interesting, and I thought this is a really killer appetizer to have before we dive into our main course today. And that is like some hobbies that we have outside of the studio that actually kind of have some relevancy in music and in the studio. Because like a lot of times the hobbies that you enjoy outside of it can teach you things or can be utilized in ways that
Very much so
for your career.
Yeah.
So you're saying your hobby you like to do is photography outside of this.
I love photography. And actually, I have a blog post on my website, shameless plug, studio222.com/blog.
Send me a link so I can put
I
it
will.
in the
I will.
description.
Yeah, that'll be in the description below. That I actually use I use photography as an example for like setting for gain staging, actually.
Oh.
So like there's a lot of similarities between these things that we do creatively, right? Like even when you go in to edit these photos, like you have saturation, and audio you have saturation, and like it's almost easier to kind of visualize what's going on in the photo software. Sure, it's not the same thing to a T, but it's a good similarity between the two, where it's like, oh, if you saturate more, you get more color out, right? But when we push a saturator more, we do get more color out, right?
Different terminology, but similar words.
Exactly.
It's kind of, and I'm assuming that's why we have these kinds of overlapping languages.
Yes, I would assume so. Yeah. It definitely is done purposefully, right?
Oh, yeah.
I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's not just an accident that we call it saturation in both ways, right? Yeah. But yeah, it's just I love photography. I don't get a lot of chances to do it, and mainly because like the camera stays here a lot of the time, it stays in the booth. But when I do get to go out into the field and stuff and take pictures, like it's just a bunch of fun. I just really enjoy it. Sometimes I just like appreciating just how things look in general, like just like being outside and like driving, I'm like, that just looks really nice, you know? So it's like, that's kind of like photography through just like seeing things, right? Yeah. But it's just like, you could get a cool picture of this and you can edit it in any way that you want. I just find that it's just a lot of fun. I wouldn't do it probably professionally. I'm not that good in it. And like, I just couldn't find like the motivation to do it. But yeah, it's definitely one of the hobbies of mine. Another one of mine is, I'll go over two other quick ones and then I'll pass it to you. First of all, hanging out with family, hanging out with the pups. Love hanging out with the dogs. It's just so much fun. Sean hates dogs.
Holy crap, dude.
Just kidding. Oh my God, I just threw him under the bus. It's not even true. It's not. Don't even listen to me. Don't even listen to me.
I just prefer cats.
So Sean hates dogs.
Yes.
And but yeah, just hang out with the pups, hang out with the family, and then
no. I don't. I'm sorry. I can't. I can't end with a yes. Anyways, you like hanging with the pups, which they look adorable, fantastic. I'd love to meet them one day.
Yes, they would bark at you.
That sounds lovely.
That's all they do when they see other people. They just bark, and I haven't been able to really train them out of that. So they will bark at you, but they're all bark, no bite. They're literally the definition of that. So I don't know why they do it. They just do it. So, and then number 3. We talked about this for probably like an hour earlier, but I love playing some casual video games. Yeah. Personally, I'm just like a casual player. Yeah. I don't consider myself like super deep into it, but you might want to share something.
Oh, well, one of my main hobbies, we start off like how photography relates to audio, but you know, it's good to have hobbies, but you can take these skills and things you learn and apply them with whatever you're doing. A hobby that I have that relates to my studio stuff is I love to build things.
Yeah.
So I built a bass guitar, a couple of guitars. I built most of my outboard preamps, a couple compressors. I'm working on a Sound Sculptor's bus compressor right now, which I'm really looking forward to getting that done because I'd like to have a little bit of glue on the output mix that I can use in my mastering chains. So
what's the emulator off of? What's the emulation off of?
The SSL G bus compressor.
Nice.
That's what it's emulated off of. Yeah. I mainly work in 500 series units because they're cheaper. There's no power supply. They just slot in the rack, smaller. It's a little harder to build because you're so confined, but you know, there's some positives and negatives with it. And Never had a 500 series unit I built be bad before. Knock on wood.
Let's hope it's not now. Let's keep that going, man.
Yeah, that's one hobby. And the other one that Brandon was highly alluding to is I am an avid video game collector and history enthusiast. Yeah. I love the history behind it.
It's impressive.
Yeah. I love the history behind it, talking about different consoles, legacy of it, the different developers of it, how it affected like the video game industry, the crash in 82 or 83, all the way up to now, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, dude.
I have a Radio Shack Pong console.
Really?
From like the late 70s.
That is so cool.
It comes with a gun.
Really?
Yeah, it's for like light guns, but actually it looks like a Colt 45.
Oh, that's cool.
It's hilarious.
Does it have an orange tip?
No, it doesn't.
Wow.
That's the funny part. This is before the legislation, so it looks like a Colt 45. It's hilarious.
That's sweet.
And then the actual Pong console from Radio Shack looks like a phone. It's like angled weirdly.
Wow.
Yeah. So like,
that is so cool.
Yeah. So there's some really just cool stuff like that. And actually, for a while, I incorporated the love of that also influenced my music and whatnot. In college, I had a couple buddies of mine that had a YouTube channel, really brief. We only did it for about like a year and a half, 2 years, called the MIDI files, where we would take an existing game, a level or stage or whatnot, and recompose a song for it as though we were commissioned to do it. So a completely original song to a video game that already exists.
Super cool.
So there's some fun things we have to do like that, and through that you learn, okay, this kind of instrument is this theme or based off other things, and kind of goes back to kind of what
like
I'm doing
certain
nowadays.
intervals too, like the first to the fifth is very heroic sounding or something like that. Yeah,
exactly.
I took a video game music class when I was in school, and like that was like one of the intervals that we learned is really prominent in like a lot of like heroic themes, you know, and motifs and stuff, just because it's such a big sounding jump.
And dude, these heroic motifs, like, they sound so empowering. Like, they're so motivating.
They really are.
For you to go in there and like just go and take on the final boss.
So my next question to you is, and then we'll get on to the episode, but my next question to you is that what's your favorite theme then? Or what's your favorite motif? What's your favorite overall soundtrack or something from a game?
Oh man, that's tough. Kirby's got some fucking killer ones. There's no reason for the Kirby soundtracks to be as hype as they are.
I feel you.
No reason.
We got the hat on.
I didn't even realize that.
You got the hat on.
I got the hat on. And I really love the Okami soundtrack.
Okay.
It's just so peaceful. And the way it flows, one of the songs that I did on the MIDI files was I redid an Okami song. That's one of my favorite songs I've ever composed. Full orchestral, you got all these different, I'm trying to think of the word, authentic or what's like a specifically place-based type of instrumentation that you don't really hear a lot in music. So it's got like the drums, the particular kind of flute that they use. Can't think of the name specifically right now, but it's just beautiful, beautiful sounding.
That's awesome. Personally, for me, I don't know if I have any favorite soundtracks that aren't like cliche, because like you know what I'm about to say. The Halo soundtrack is really damn good. It's really sad that I kind of like. Is that sad?
No.
Like, come on. It's good, though, right?
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like everybody says that.
There's a reason.
It's just unanimously good.
If it's good, it's good. I mean, there's a reason that a whole bunch of high school boys would sing in their locker rooms and bathrooms.
That's what I'm saying, right? Right? Dude, those were awesome. Some of those kids could really, like, belt. I was like, dude, like, there's a talent there. So, you might want to explore that. But another one of mine, which is, like, slightly underrated, and is the Fallout theme. Like the main theme, like when you get to the menu, I just love the big chords that they have there. It's just very nostalgic to me personally. Nobody would probably agree with that because the rest of the soundtrack is not really very memorable at all, but it's just the main theme. So that's it.
If it speaks to you, that's the, that's
it spoke to me, man.
It spoke.
And
you listened.
Spoketh. And I listened. I will always listen. I'll always be there for Fallout. That's really sad. Cut that out. It's staying in. I know.
Staying in. I need to play Fallout.
It's good.
And I gave forward a good segue with the boss music being motivating. And then you asked me what soundtrack I preferred. I'm like,
oh, my bad.
I was like, I like motivation. We're talking about motivation today.
Sorry for being conversational.
This is an educational, helpful podcast.
Well, people don't just want to hear us talk about ourselves and our hobbies.
Not in this format.
That's true.
In the future, we might have a Patreon where you can just listen to us riff for the after party or have the dessert or whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, I forgot. We had a name for it too.
We did, yeah.
We'll circle back to this sometime.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll find the motivation to circle back to it.
Maybe we will. kind of like the motivation it takes, finding motivation to make music.
Wow.
And you ever have this feeling where you wanted to, and you could have, and maybe you would, and then you could, and then it was, and then you made the song?
all the above.
I fucking love that meme. Anyways. So you said this episode idea was brought to you by one of your friends who listens to this podcast.
Yeah, so basically what happened the other day is that my friend Brian, he comes to the studio. He goes by the name D1 Pablo. Shout out to him and his music. He's going to a studio out in Maryland to go take a course to get kind of certified in Pro Tools and to learn how to mix master, all that good stuff, track and all that fun stuff. And one of his main questions was to me the other day is, how do you stay motivated, or how do you stay creative in situations that you don't want to be creative in? So like that could be like genre, that could be like the day that you wake up. Like sometimes you just don't feel motivated, but like how do you keep that consistent drive, and or how are you able to work on this every day? And I thought that was a really good question. He was like, yeah, you should talk about this on the podcast. I was like, sweet, I'll make a note of that. We're going to talk about it. And it's actually kind of fitting because we just finished the live concert series that we just wrapped up.
Episode 11 through 17.
That's right. Go check them out. And we were talking about it last week. We were like, okay, what are we going to do next? And it's like, we just come out this really big, like heavy, lots of information topics, right? And now it's like, okay, well now we can do whatever we want. So it's like, well, how do we stay motivated and keeping going, right? Like, what do we do next? How do we find the motivation? And that's kind of where the idea came from.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the story. I figured, like, why not talk about it? Because obviously this is not a vacuum question, right? A lot of people have this question, and this varies between people. Some things like that I get excited about, you might not get excited about yourself, but you have to find that within it, right? And that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. And we're going to talk about a couple different methods to kind of use for it.
Well, in a past episode, it was briefly brought up the different ways that people get shit done. And I voiced my idea that there are really two different kind of things that people do to get things done. Either they rely on motivation or they rely on discipline.
Yeah.
So either you just have such strong discipline that you always get it done, or you do things when you're motivated and maybe don't do them when you're not motivated. And we talked about briefly the idea of, the difference between the two, like which one are you? And like we talked about, I said, like, I'm more of a motivation guy. I only really work when I'm motivated. And you said you're more of the discipline guy, where you should try to put things in process to show up every day. And we're going to dive into how we both make both these approaches work. But to kind of break down the difference of the two, we kind of talked beforehand how like the working with motivation, you still have to train the muscle of getting motivated so that you can consistently be motivated to get the work done. That's how you build consistency, through working with motivation.
Right.
A lot of people work with discipline. You have to train the muscle of getting it done. So set up the habits and the systems to make sure you are in a place where you just tackle it no matter what you're feeling that day.
Yeah.
Both are muscles and things you have to build to put in place to get to the end result, which is either motivation or the discipline to handle it. Yeah. And they both take time and habits, but that's kind of how we've broken down and described both of it.
And to piggyback off of that is, like, motivation is sometimes often looked at as like using like your turbojets, right? Like you turn them on and then you extinguish it real quick, right? Because it's a fleeting feeling sometimes.
Or go until you burn out.
Or go until you burn out. And while that's great, and motivation can certainly spark a lot of cool stuff like that and a lot of magic, you need to learn how to recapture that motivation and keep it consistent.
It's like a spark plug. It's great at starting.
It is.
It's great at getting it going.
Exactly.
Not necessarily
at
sustaining.
Yeah.
On its own.
Exactly. And a lot of people, they rely on it to sustain them. And that usually leads to burnout, writer's block, and honestly just self-doubt too, because like the more you kind of rely on it and the less like return you're seeing from something, or the less the dopamine spike comes down, or the more the dopamine spike comes down, the more you start to be like, I don't know about this anymore. And then you lose the song, right? Or you lose the magic of what you were doing. So
you exit the flow state.
Exactly.
Flow state is a term we're probably going to use consistently throughout this, which you're probably familiar with it, but just in case you're not, it's just the state of being completely involved with what you're doing, where it feels right, and you don't worry about time, you don't worry about anything else. You're just in that state of creation where everything, it just feels right. And basically what we're going to be talking about today is ways to get yourself to get to do the work, and also ways that help you maintain that flow state and get into it as consistently as possible. Because this is all about consistency. I just took this bullet point from you, but consistency is key.
It is key though. Seriously. I mean, like you have to be able to show up every day and do this. So you need to find the habits that we're going to talk about, and like how you find those habits too, by the way. But you have to find the habits, and you have to find the things that keep you excited and motivated every day. And that way you can keep continuously reaching this flow state and be as creative as possible when you need to, because there will be times you need to be creative that you don't want to be creative. It's just a part of the game that you have to play, and it's a part of the job. Seriously.
For sure. So here's the hard part about this episode that we're going to have to try to tackle today, is that the way you get motivated, the things that inspire you to create the art, to be the artist that you are, is very different from the things that inspire us to do our art and to create the things that we create. And it's different for everyone listening to this, and everyone who is currently exists, has existed, and will exist throughout the future. There's no answer of, hey, if you wake up and follow my routine to a T, you will get this result. It'll never be the exact same because you're not the exact person. So we're going to try to tackle it with stories relating to us, but don't take it as if I do exactly what he does, it will work for me, because as we established right off the bat, we work in completely different ways. You might be a combination of the two. You might be more one towards the other. You may you might be motivated by reading books or exercise or certain movies, or this podcast. Maybe listening to this helps motivate you. It varies per person. So one of the ways to kind of like get motivated, whether to start with your discipline or start with just with motivated, kind of redundant, that wording of being motivated to do it, but one of the ways to kind of put yourself in that mindset of getting it done, it's going to be completely different from you than anybody else.
This definitely isn't a plug and play episode. Like, you have to find out what's good for you.
So take some notes and think on it.
Yep. And like, honestly, this might be one of those things where you're trying to take notes and you're trying to think of what motivates you, right? And you're just like, I don't even know what motivates me. And then the next day you'll go do something that motivates you and you won't even notice, So just try to be conscious of the things that get you moving in the morning, or get you moving. I mean, whenever you're making music in the evening after work, right before bed, or whatever the case may be, but just take a note of the habits that you're doing, and that kind of lead to this success along the way.
Well, the thing I recommend to artists that I work with that maybe don't necessarily have the question of, well, how do I get motivated? How do I find these things that make me want to create consistently? A great place to start is to think about where you were and what it was that made you want to do this in the first place. What are the songs that made you pick up guitar, or made you start singing, or that get you dancing the most? Or what are the reasons that caused you to, try to get into a promotion, or that got you into video if you want to do more video for your promotional things? What got you excited to do that? What kind of resources were you shown or introduced to that got you excited on how you could implement them to dive into this and decide, hey, I want to make being an artist my career. That's a goal of mine. I want to make a living doing this because I love this. What got you to love this? Sometimes when you get into it, when you get into the woods and are surrounded by trees, it's hard to see the woods.
It is, definitely.
Because you get lost in all the details around you. So a great place to start is to step back and say, well, why did I go into this forest to begin with? And that's a great place to start, to be reminded of, oh, I'm motivated. Because when you first started this, I guarantee you, if not, tell me you're an anomaly, but I can guarantee that you started this because there was a passion, something, you were introduced something, you were shown something that was like, I need to do that. Not like I want to do it, I need to do it. Because if you're making the decision of, I want to make this my livelihood, then there's a strong passion there. There's a strong feeling that almost like you need to do it. I know a lot of artists I talk to are like, I don't create because I want to, I create because there's a need there.
Absolutely.
And what caused that? Go back, think about it. Is it this band you heard for the first time was like, yes, that's exactly why I'm doing this? Then listen to the band again. Is it the first time you ever opened up this program and messed around with it, you were totally engaged? Go back to that program. Maybe you look up a demo or a walkthrough of a new tool that the program can do that you didn't know before.
Yeah.
Even if you're super familiar with it, like I know how to use Photoshop like the back of my hand. I guarantee you there's some small weird things or ways you can combine things that
Most
are
definitely.
very unique. Or, oh man, I know Pro Tools like crazy. There's like so much I don't know about Pro Tools. I do it for a living.
Same.
There's so much I don't know about Pro
Yeah.
Tools.
Yeah.
So maybe try to educate yourself more on that. Or if it's you read a book about, you know, like a personal development book or a motivational book, and you're like, yes, I can do this. I can take control. I can try this out in my life. I'll take the dive. Reread the book, read through your notes, go back to where it started. That's a great place to, if you don't know where to go to find your motivation, go back to what motivated you in the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's just my quick recommendation.
That's great. And honestly, I think that's the way that I kind of do it a lot of the time too, is like, yeah, just kind of return back to what made me fall in love with this in the first place. And then something I also do as well, and like, I don't recommend this for everybody, but like sometimes operating off of a scarcity mindset can be beneficial. And I don't mean it in like a very negative way, but it's like, what would I rather be doing right now? Right? What would I be doing right now? What's the alternative for me? Right. Yeah. And that kind of is like, I want to make sure that I'm doing this for as long as possible. And then like, that's enough motivation for me to be like, just got to keep going. You know, like I said, it's not applicable to everybody, and it can lead you to a dark path, really. So you have to be really mindful of how you use that scarcity, because you can use it to an advantage, but it can get out of hand too pretty quick. So just be careful with that one.
Well, because time is a limited resource.
It is.
So having a scarcity mindset towards time isn't necessarily incorrect.
Right.
But yeah, depending on who you are, how it works for you. Remember, your mindset, like anything else that you're using, like your instruments, like your voice, like your practice space, like your software, these are tools. Now you have to train your mindset and put it in certain ways through building habits and whatnot, but it is a tool to help that you can use to get things done. What you brought up kind of feeds into the concept of clean fuel and dirty fuel.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is I'm gonna say personal development. Or personal development or self-motivational concept that a lot of people use is there is dirty fuel, which is negative things that drive you to be better. And there's good fuel, which are positive things that drive you to be better. Dirty fuel can be very harmful in the long run.
Yes.
Kind of like how dirty fuel is very harmful to like the environment or the world around us, or
your car.
Or a car, or like just our health. If you're like, dirty fuel.
If you eat the way that I do, it's terrible.
McDonald's is dirty fuel.
Yes, it is.
Taco Bell's dirty fuel.
Yes, it is.
But it can get you a boost of energy. It can get you through a lot that you need to get through. In fact, it can even be more powerful than clean fuel for short periods of time when used properly. There's a lot of people you talk to where it's like, well, why did I do this? Oh, I did this to show them that I can.
Yeah.
Because like they said I couldn't. That's dirty fuel to show somebody else or to overcome something because of the negativity that they gave you. That's a dirty fuel, but it caused them to make great positive changes. So having a scarcity mindset can be a really powerful dirty fuel.
Yes, it can.
Now, how can you switch it later on to a more clean fuel for long consistency burning? So like if your goals are to have a family, your current thing can be, it's a dirty fuel. Time is scarce. I only have so much to do. I have all these things I got to do. They said I couldn't. She has no faith in me. He has no faith. Like my parents say I can't make it as a musician. Driven by dirty fuel. But once you get there, you have to make that mental note and make that conscious effort to transition once you no longer need it. Okay, I'm here. I have accomplished what I did. I showed them all. I told my parents I can do it. I have, I've done it. I've spent my time correctly. Now I have a family. Now I do this for my family. Now it's switched to positive fuel. I do it so I can help support my kids. I do it so I can help support my significant other. Or I do it so I can have extra money for these charities, or however you want to do it. I do it for my own mental health because it makes me feel good. It's a way to outlet or to go through my thoughts. Like if you have the mental idea of, I went on a bit of a tangent here.
No,
but
please.
You brought it up.
Because I'm gonna riff off of this in a second.
Please do, yeah. So you can use dirty fuel to a certain point, just to summarize it, but make sure if you do use it, have a mental note of when you get to what point can you stop doing it. And make sure you refresh it so when you do get there, you don't keep burning dirty fuel longer than you have to and burn yourself out and hurt yourself in the long run. At what point will you achieve the things you want to achieve that you can then transition to a more sustainable motivation?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first of all, the clean fuel versus dirty fuel is it's just fantastic. I didn't even think of that until you brought it up. And like, it's just such a good way to summarize like those concepts that we were kind of talking about. Number two is that when you do make this change, like you do have to change, right? People burn on dirty fuel for a while and then they get to the point where they wanted to be and then they get complacent, right? You put it in neutral, right? And like you stop looking for other ways of being motivated. You don't look for the clean fuel after that, right? You just kind of just sit there and nothing happens, right? Like you're there, but like you're not really progressing even further than that. And like Sean was saying, that you're going to want to change those motivations when you get there. So you have a family, you're going to do it for your family, right? Or you make it into the Billboard charts, right? And you have a plaque, but you want to go further, right? You want to beat yourself, like in terms of like, I want to beat my numbers from last album, or I want to beat my songwriting from last album or something like that, right? So yeah, that pivotal change is just so key, because you can get complacent real quick. And like if that's where you want to be though, if that's your end goal though, right? Just to say, if that's your end goal where you end up after burning the dirty fuel and you want to stay there, there's nothing wrong with that. Like live your life the way that you want, right? Do whatever you want in your career. But if you want to keep going, then yeah, you're going to have to change that mindset.
So I was recently introduced to a concept. It's a business concept I learned from Alex Hormozy. And it's kind of the concept of there is no complacency. You're either growing or you're dying. And I'm going to kind of mesh this business idea with kind of artistic term, artistic livelihood, or whatever, philosophy, however you want to phrase it. Definitely not using the right words. But
Sure.
as you're saying, like at a certain point, if you use your dirty fuel to get to a place you want to be, then you know you're there now and you don't want to grow more, you're fine. Well, there's this idea that you're either growing or you're dying as a business, because every year the stock market increases 9%. So if you are not increasing 9%, then, and you are like below the average, this is average year over year, not every year it goes this much. It's not a guarantee. This isn't investment advice or anything. But inflation is a thing that's consistent. As a whole, markets grow consistently. The same thing happens in pretty much every industry. There is growth, consistent. So to stay consistent, you still need to grow.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you want to stay where you are as a company, you need to grow 9% to match the rest of the economy. If you want to stay consistent as an artist, you still have to grow year over year. You have to grow year over year to stay consistent as an artist and stay consistent with your livelihood, with a career. Now that can take different forms. That can take different ways of doing things. You can be complacent in one thing and try things in another route to help yourself personally grow. But at that point, once again, you have to stop using the dirty fuel.
Yeah. That's fair though. That's a good analogy.
Yeah, even if you get where you need to get, and you don't want to grow more, you still have to switch it.
Right.
You have to switch it because to stay consistent, you still have to grow.
Definitely. That's a good point. It's an excellent point. And that makes sense too, because we are always propelling forward, right? Like the universe is always going forward, right? Where we're not stopping in time and nobody's staying the same, right? So that makes sense though. So if you stop, you die a slow death, right? Like you're slowly, I mean, that, like realistically, you're like slowly getting behind the curve, and like it kind of adds up over time, like almost exponentially too, because then all of a sudden you'll wake up one day and be like, holy shit, I'm way behind the curve. But that makes sense though, because you do have to keep up with some sort of standard along the way, and even if it's like progression in the sense of perspective, right? So like you're progressing with the 9%. We're just going to use that as the reference, right? Yeah. So you're gaining 9% every year with it, but you're really kind of staying neutral with it in the grand scheme of things, because you're kind of just staying at that point, right? You don't want to propel further than the frontier. So that's the way that I kind of am thinking about it. And I did a lot of econ homework last night. So frontier and everything is in my head right now. So
it's fresh in mind.
Dude, it's fresh, dude. I'm actually glad I did, because it feels like homework for the podcast. So, and like we talked about scarcity last night. Here we are. Yeah. So there you go. Atomic Habits.
So we kind of breached over. Yeah, exactly. Was that a transition, or was that just straight up saying the next thing?
That's up for you to decide.
All right, I'm gonna try to smooth it out a little bit. We talked over, different ways to get things done through motivation or through discipline. We talked about like those are the ways to do it. We talked about how to get motivated, where to start if you don't have ideas and how to do it. And when you do start, if you can use dirty or to clean fuel, the whole concept of what are you using to get the ball rolling and keep you moving forward. But now let's kind of take a step back, going more into the nitty gritty where, you know, you've decided these things motivate me. These get me into what I need to do. I'm of the personality that I need to work on motivation or I need to work on discipline, whichever aspect works best for you. Either way, you have to form habits. And a habit is just something that you kind of subconsciously do.
Yeah.
Something that's easy for you to repeat consistently. Say consistency is key. Time after time to help get you a certain result. So there's a certain book called Atomic Habits.
It's a wonderful book.
Yeah, by James Clear. And he really dives into the whole idea of it's really the small things that compound again and again and again that really get the biggest results. It's the small habits that you import into your life that over the long time get you crazy, insane, successful results.
Yep.
So to kind of break into his process, it's a phenomenal book.
It is.
Buy it, read it. It'll really change the way you think about things.
Yeah.
I need to reread it. It's one of the books I want to read every year.
Yeah.
And I haven't yet this year. So
I haven't either. It's been a while.
Yeah, I got 3 months to do it. I'm going to do it.
I'm going to start tomorrow. I'm going to start on the way home today. Swear to God.
All right. So by the next episode, we're both going to be going through Atomic Habits again.
That's right.
Actually, no, next episode, we're recording the next episode today still.
Oh, yeah. So the episode after that.
Yeah, episode 20.
Yeah.
Which almost at 2-0, man.
I know.
But he kind of breaks down the process of forming a habit. And he breaks down to the 4 steps, which are cue, craving, ease, and reward. Step 1, 2, 3, and 4. So like cue, make it obvious. Whatever you want to do, whatever habit you want to form, make it obvious so it's in front of you and you can see it.
Yep.
The second one, craving. Make it attractive. Make it so that you want to do it. Not only when you see it, but now you want to go and you want to engage in it. Step 3 is ease. Make it easy. So whatever habit you're trying to form, make it so that it remove as many barriers in front of it as you possibly can. And then number 4, reward is, make it satisfying so that when you're done, you feel rewarded for doing it. So just kind of break it down real quick. Then we're going to specifically relate to how it goes into being creative by kind of applying this to our own processes. So the first one, I'll just kind of dive into how I do it.
Please.
So the first thing is cue. The whole breakdown is make it clear. He talks about the book talks about something called habit stacking, which I'll dive into in a little bit. And then also like how to like prime your environment, make it so that where you are is an incredibly beneficial place to be for what you're trying to do. So for cue, to make my habit obvious, the habit that I need to do is get in a creative space. The end goal is to be motivated to do work. So how can I do things to help get me motivated? One of the big things that really motivates me is coffee. When I have coffee in the morning. Yes, when I have coffee in the morning, I have such a more productive day. There's other things I do. I go to the gym. I would try to work out in the morning. I read books or whatnot. But one of the big things I do in the morning that really helps me is make it obvious. So a couple months ago, about 5 months ago, I bought a coffee maker for my studio. I have a couple mugs there. I got a couple Keurig pods and whatnot. A couple of my favorite coffee. I shared some with Brandon a while ago. My favorite creamer and coffee.
So good. I just had
creamer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We do use creamer.
We don't make nice coffee yet.
No, we don't.
I'm sorry, Brian. But
we're getting there though.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
But anyways, so when I get into my studio and I open the door, the way I store it is I open the door, I walk in, I close the door. Right next to the door is my coffee maker. And right next to the coffee maker are my pods. And I keep my mugs stored next to it as well. So, boom, obvious. I get to my studio, right there, there's coffee.
You flick the switch, then you flick up the Keurig thing.
Exactly.
Seriously, that's how close it is.
Exactly.
In the studio,
yeah. And so talk about habit stacking, which is the concept he goes over, which is making habits easier by attaching them to other things. Well, I've attached it to a conscious habit that we all have, kind of like you just said, flipping on the light switch.
Yep.
Well, I flip on the right switch and it's right there.
Yep.
I close my door and it's right there. Something I already do every day. I close the door because I get a lot of noise from the street that can bleed through the double doors. So unless I close my solid door, I can get noise in my studio. So I close the door and there's the coffee. I do one thing, I do the next thing. So one thing leads to the other. And then I prime the environment. I said, I have the Keurig cups there. I have the cup right next to it. It's always full of water. And it's in my studio. So after I have my coffee, I'm in a location that makes it very attractive for me to get to work now that I have some energy. So moving on to the second one, which is craving, make the habit attractive. And the habit, once again, is to be motivated to do the work. It breaks it down into some other ideas. I built my studio space to be very a certain vibe. The colors it has, the way it's set up, the way my gear is laid out. I have a good chunk of hardware gear because that's more fun for me to work with. So because of that's pretty much all that's in my mixing room. It's just mainly a mixing room. So of course, I got this coffee. I'm in this room. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to sit down.
Yeah.
At my desk. And while I'm here, my computer's right in front. My sessions are right here. All my hardware is going. My system to boot it up, I manually turn on a lot of my gear to get it going. And that process of turning everything up and having all the lights come to life and all the hardware wake up makes it very attractive for me to want to work on it.
It's like those cool motivational videos at the beginning of football season where, you know, you had the player, you had the shot of the player behind and they're walking out to the field and they turn on the lights at night, you know, and it's like, oh, that's really nice, you know, or you have like a studio shot where people come downstairs, flick on the lights like we do, turn on the shit, everything fires up, the motorized faders go up, and then you have the flashing lights and stuff. Euphoric feeling.
Exactly. And for me, I love knobs. So I'm like, okay, I want to work on this. Well, if I want to use this stuff, I need to have a session.
Yeah.
I need to get to work.
Yep. Absolutely.
The third one is ease, you know, make it easy to perform. Well, as I said, I have a coffee. I made it attractive because everything's fired up and I'm diving to go into it. It's all set up. It's all right there. All in the same room. I'm in this area that is built to help motivate me and inspire me. I've got all vinyl of the bands that I love listening to that got me into this all on the ceiling. So I can just look at them. I'm in an environment completely full of things that get me excited.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to get going because I have a lot of systems put in place to help me jump right in. So I have a piece of gear, which is my favorite piece of gear in the studio. It's not an audio thing. It's my Elgato Stream Deck.
Yeah.
I love my Elgato Stream Deck.
So good. I love mine too.
I have programmed macros to, at a press of a button, it opens up Chrome and all my relevant tabs that I need for work. I press another button and it opens my Pro Tools, all my sessions, and I can press another button to create new sessions. It automatically puts in the date, makes the sub files, puts it where it needs to go. Super easy for me to jump in.
Yeah.
I literally press two buttons. All my emails and socials and all stuff I need for work is up on one screen. I press another button on my second screen. I'm right into my sessions.
Yep.
Super easy. I took down the barrier.
Godsend.
Exactly. I reduced all the friction.
Yep.
And the third is the reward. Well, the reward is making it satisfying. And it's really satisfying at the end of the day.
It is.
To be like, wow, I did all this work today.
Yep.
I worked on all these songs. They sound super fun. I had so much fun mixing them. It just feels good to complete a task. So I'm motivated to do it and I keep doing it. And at the end of the day, I feel way better having done it than if I just kind of spent the day doing anything else.
Definitely.
So that's kind of how I've structured it. And as you've seen, I don't have it structured to, these are the things I do to make sure I get it done. These are things I do. Everything I do helps build an experience and build energy in me to be motivated to do it. The coffee gives me energy in the morning and gets me excited to, you know, get things done. Yeah. I'm drinking coffee right now. If you can tell I'm excited, it fucking works on me.
Same.
It's one hell of a drug and I love it. Booting up
You're
the
not
thing.
lying though.
I'm not.
You're not lying.
Like the lights, building it with hardware makes it so I want to play with it. Makes it so it's a fun experience. I want to dive in. I'm motivated to work so I can use my tools because to me that's fun. Yeah. If you're not taking it seriously, if you're not having fun, you're not taking it serious enough. True. I will say that every episode. I will find a way to sneak it in. It's my favorite fucking saying. I reduce all the friction. I have two buttons that pop it all up. So immediately I'm in the space that inspires me with the work I need to do right in front of me and the tools that I have fun doing it with. I am so motivated to dive in. Yep. And because I know how I have to tackle these tasks. Now, if I just had a laptop and a small interface, like how I started off, it was hard for me to do large amounts of work because sitting in my bed with my interface, moving around on the mouse with my headphones on, that wasn't really exciting. That wasn't really fun to me. I wasn't motivated by that. But everything I've built around, having my own studio space, having killer sounding monitors, building this room so that it sounds great to me, the whole hardware integration. If you can't tell, I'm getting excited just talking about
Sean's
it.
about to leave and go to work, man.
I fucking love working.
Seriously. That's how passionate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can do that with everything you need to do about making work. And this also includes editing this podcast, making posts for social media. There's ways that I've incorporated and built habits that I do beforehand to make those more engaging and more exciting for me as well. Like, what aspects do I like about content creation? How do I emphasize those and make the whole experience of creating this fun? That's why we haven't missed a day of the podcast.
No, we haven't.
That's why
we've been very consistent.
Yeah, we've been very consistent. We always come here and record because it's super easy how we do it. It's close to me on my way to work. You have to stay here all day afterwards. We've organized it, how we set up and tear down and make it super easy. The habit of what time we meet in the morning, consistently on the week. There's a whole process that goes behind it that gets me super excited. Every Wednesday, by the time I get here, I'm so excited to record this.
Same.
So that's how I function.
Yeah.
Everything I do, I try to function, put in places and systems that build habits that make me excited and motivated to get the work done.
Same. Yeah.
So that's me running through the process. You probably don't have to break down each individual section like I did, unless you really want to, and how it applies to what you do. But yeah, that's how I use this as a way to work with motivation.
Yeah.
Brandon works with not dedication, discipline.
Yes. Mine's pretty similar too. And like, there will be similarities between the two. Of course, there's a point during the day though that I think Sean and I we space off, right? So like when I get up, have coffee, take the dogs out, shower. Driving here is a pain in the ass right now because there's so much construction. So that'll actually ruin like a part of my morning routine. It always takes me out of it, which really sucks.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So there are like 4 podcasts and like some songs and playlists that, depending on what mood I'm in, depending on what I have to do that day, I will listen to help get me excited. Yeah. By the time I get where I need to go. Do you do something similar?
Yes, I do. So like if I'm mixing like a certain genre that day and it's a genre that I haven't listened to in a while, I'll listen to that just to kind of get my head space in the right space and be like, okay, yeah, I hear what they're doing there. Cool. Then like, what if if I'm not really feeling music that day, then I will listen to like a podcast that's specific towards like maybe like studio or towards music or towards business in general, even towards like finance in general. I've been really digging the Money Guy podcast. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. They're fantastic though. It's all personal finance stuff, but that gets me excited. I'm like, oh, how can we do this? How can I do this better? So that does get me excited, and that actually translates really well to the first thing I do when I get down here, but I'll get to that in a second. But sometimes I like on podcast days, it's funny you even bring that up. I will listen to, at least I did listen to, their season just ended, but That Sounds About Right podcast. It's with Greasy Will and Shane Lance, and they're very conversational in how they speak to each other. They go off on a lot of tangents, and I find it's a lot of fun, but the conversational aspect of it gets me warmed up to be on the podcast, right?
It's a little familiar going on random tangents and getting.
I don't know anybody else that does that in the podcasting land. Yeah, it's crazy to us. I could never conceive of us ever doing that. But like that is actually a podcast I will listen to get warmed up. And sometimes I don't need that. Like, but there might be days that I'm like, I feel a little shaky or rusty or something. I need to listen to this, right? And prep myself. So, but unfortunately, like I said, the construction on the way here has been so brutal recently that it's really kind of taken me out of the routine a little bit. And like I struggle to get back onto the routine. So once I get here, and I'm done cussing everybody out in traffic. No, I'm just playing. But seriously, I do the same thing. I come down here, turn on the lights, turn on the computer and stuff. Mine is all like two flicks. I don't have to go behind anything, and that's just because like my setup is like way more in the box and way more like just like I guess condensed. Although I would love some analog gear. So whenever the sponsorships want to come, that's cool with me.
I keep offering and he keeps saying no.
He offers me every time, and I know it's going to be expensive. So I can't do it. I'm already borrowing one of his microphones.
It's
so.
not expensive to start. It's just expensive to keep going.
Well, that's the problem, though. It's like a gateway drug. That's the problem.
And I'm trying to get you to take a hit, damn it.
I know, and I won't. I'm above peer pressure for now. It's coming though. I can feel myself slightly cracking, but so I'll do the same thing. Once I fire up the computer, open up Pro Tools, and the next thing I always do, and I used to associate this with coffee every time, but usually I have my coffee on my way here now, is I will open up like my accounting software. I will open up Pro Tools, and the two things that I do all the time. First, I will check my accounting software, make sure everything is going out that needed to go out, or I will send an invoice from the day before or whatever, or just make sure that I'm tracking the money coming in or the expenses going out, and just making sure that I know my numbers so concretely that I could actually tell you them right now. You know what I'm saying? And that's like, I always make a habit of that. I check it every day, just like how I check my bank account every day. And then number two is I always do revisions first thing. So like I often get revisions like maybe sometimes overnight, or maybe when I'm in a session the day after or something like that, or the day before. And I will always make sure that I do that first thing in the morning, because I want to make sure people have that ready to go first thing. And then that makes so if I'm there for the rest of the day, I can get more revisions done if I get revisions back right from that revision.
Can I make an observation? I want you to let me know if this is right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So as when I went through my stuff, I do things for motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And you do things more for the discipline or the muscle of just getting it done.
Mm-hmm.
Doing revisions, how does it take you more or less time than most other things in the studio?
Less.
Okay. So if you knock revisions out first thing,
mm-hmm.
how is that a good chunk of tasks completed right when you get down here?
Yes, a majority of the time.
And that allows that the discipline of like doing that
mm-hmm.
allows you to get a big chunk of things out of the way.
Because I'm already feeling successful by 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Right. And like that is like such a big motivator
mm-hmm.
too, because it's like, oh, I just did this. Like I'm going to keep going and see what else I can knock out today.
Mm-hmm.
And often I'm racing the clock a lot of the time, not because like I have to leave at a certain point, but it's because I might have a session at some point. Right. So like, let's say I have a session today at 2:00. Right. And I'm racing the clock not right at this moment, but let's say it like yesterday, like I'm mixing a track. I have to feel good about getting to a certain point within the mix or finishing the mix. That'd be nice. And waiting
mm-hmm.
for mastering the next day or something if I'm mastering it. But like I have a set point that I want to get to, that I can feel good the next day coming in, being like, I stopped right here. I can start from here. Right. And I'm going to get that done either the next day or the day after, depending on like the sessions, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never check my schedule ever, because I know my schedule by the beginning of the week. Swear to God, it's just ingrained in my head. From the moment I schedule a session, I know when the session is. Like I don't have to check it, but I also get notifications too. So I might be a little biased. I might know, but it's always like I never check it. And I'm always like trying to plan out how to get things done that day, right? So you made that point, like it's more like I come down here, it's very disciplined, like get the revisions done. You know what I'm saying? Then move on to the mix, and then move on to the session.
Do you ever go on to, like, let's say there's a mix you're really looking forward to do. Do you ever start with that mix, or do you always do revisions first?
I will always do revisions first.
See, that's where this one comes in.
I will always do revisions first, because sometimes it's really just as simple as, oh, I missed maybe a cut there, or maybe I didn't fade something off here and there's a click there, or, you know, the bigger revisions, it depends, right? Like, I don't like this the way that it sounds. That could be a whole can of worms that you want to open up later. But generally, like, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to open it up now because it's fresh.
Well, you at least review all the revisions
exactly.
first. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. So I'll knock that out, send that off. And then by the time I send it off, hopefully that person will be able to get back to me within that day, and I can do the next round. And then hopefully if I don't finish it in that second round, then hopefully if I can get the third round done by the end of the day. So that way we're done, you know, and then the next day I package it up, send it off. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing I do in the first place, in the first part of the day too, is say there's a song, we finished up revisions, or if there were no revisions, I will come in that morning. So this actually is point number 3. Sorry, I'm a little scattered, but this is actually point number 3, along with checking the accounting software and getting revisions done is I will package up everything at the beginning of the day too. So I have like a whole folder that I put together, and I will make sure that I get every single deliverable into that folder and then send it off to that person first thing in the morning. I just think that's really important. I think it's just kind of like, I'm an impatient person. Like, I think we talked about this before.
I've gathered, yeah.
And like, I want to make sure like my package gets here like as fast as possible. And like, I want people to share that same, I guess, expectation, you know, is like, I want to make sure that they have their song ready to go whenever they want to do something with it. Like, I just think that's proper, you know? So that's usually why I do those things first thing in the morning. And then outside of that, another one, the big point that we're kind of circling back to within this episode is like, how do you stay disciplined, right?
Yeah.
I've always said like creativity is kind of like a muscle that you kind of flex, you know, and that you work on a lot of the time. You do need your rest, right? So like, I'm not going to be down here for 15 hours every single day, right? Just constantly being creative, because like you need that time to let the muscle rest and actually like repair itself.
No, you don't. Yeah, you do.
I was about to say he's about to blow my mind with something right now. Because if that's true, then I need to know that.
You just need to be insane.
That's fair.
And dumb.
I am one of those things.
Same here.
And I'll let you fill in the blank on which one I am.
No, that was more just like a personal joke, because I've been working 14 hours a day, very consistently.
Yeah, that's fair.
This past couple of months, and
That's
it's
fair.
It's been taking a toll.
It gets brutal after a while.
It does.
You might be able to do like a big sprint of it, but then all of a sudden like that 14, 15-hour day, it's like, ooh, this is starting to catch up to me, you know? And then it's like, ooh, I don't feel creative. I want to stay home, you know, fuck this.
And if you don't take a rest, your body will make you take a rest.
Exactly.
There have been days where I've slept for like 20 plus hours straight. Because my body's just like, no.
Yep. It's just like, well, I'm just going to give out and make you rest.
You're just done now. Yeah.
Yep. And whether that comes in the form of being sick, like acutely, where you have like the flu or a cold, God forbid, or it comes in the form of sickness chronically, which is the one that you want to avoid at all costs, because it can really affect the way that your life projects from here, right? So I think one of the things that I want to make a big point on, and this is like the kind of like when we were talking about muscle being, or creativity being a muscle, is that I do have scheduled sessions, and you do too. Do you produce in your sessions?
For some clients, I do. Not the majority. It's not a service I offer all the time, but I know that's a big service that you offer.
It is, and oftentimes it's not even like a publicized service for me personally. It just happened, right? And like, so I think you can relate to some of this too, is like sometimes you'll have a session that day and you're just like, oh man, I'm not feeling creative. Like, I'm really worried that I'm going to shit the bed today. And like, I'm not going to be able to think of anything and get anything done. I have no ideas. And sometimes I get ahead of myself with that sometimes, right? But you still have to go into the session anyways. What are you going to do? Cancel? Right? You got to cancel on someone. I guess if you're having a terrible day, like maybe consider postponing or rescheduling, but just know that there's repercussions to that, right? So you're going to go into the session, right? And you're going to sit down with the artist, and they're going to play you a song, and you hear that song, right? You have like two different paths. Either you shit the bed and you don't do anything with it, or you keep pushing forward and finding something within that song that makes you excited, that gives you the motivation. But you may have to make sure that you're able to flex that creativity and really just hone into that creativity along the way, right? So like, it's a skill. So let's say somebody comes up with an acoustic track. I know I'm on a tangent, but somebody comes in with an acoustic track and lyrics, right? And they're like, I want to make this a full production. Now it's time to flex the creativity, right? Okay, what does the song sound like? What kind of elements do I need in there? What do the drums need to sound like? What kind of bass are we going to use? We're going to use electronic bass. We're going to use like a sub bass. We're going to use a synth bass. And then you start kind of getting into the weeds of it. And then you find the motivations along the way where you're like, oh, this sounds really cool with this. And I didn't think it would, right? Like you start bringing it together, and then all of a sudden there's life in the track. But you have to make sure that you're actually willing and able to flex that creativity along the way to keep it going. So both of our points play really, really close in tandem with that, especially during sessions. And that's a lot of the time where I find not only the motivation, but it's just like the discipline to keep going, right? So long tangent. So sorry about that. So yeah, that's where I'm kind of coming from with that.
So, and that's a good point. Like, depending on different situations you are, you do have to be able to flex the creativity muscle in certain points. So a certain aspect you brought up of like if someone brings in a song for you to produce on, something you do, if you ask certain questions, a way I would tackle it is I would ask about certain instruments or aspects of the song that I personally find more interesting as a starting point. Like instead of being like, hey, have you thought about putting a piano on this? Or I would start with, hey, have you started about putting out bass on this? What kind of bass?
Yeah.
Because that's an instrument that I have expertise in or experience with. I want to say expertise. I have experience in, and that's usually a part of a song that helps get me excited about a song.
Totally.
So if I'm having a hard time getting there, I would start with something that would give me some excitement, some motivation
And
towards
especially something that you know really well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So now let's kind of talk about like, as an artist, like we talked about how we do this in our lives and in our studios, but as an artist, just a real quick, basic run through of putting together habits that help get you able to consistently show up in your music day after day, be it on social media, be it making new music if you're a songwriter, consistently writing songs or whatnot. Like going back to what gets you excited to do things. Well, maybe you're a songwriter and you get a lot of inspiration from the city, the town that you live in, and seeing things and the things that people do in life and having those experiences. Well, what are some habits you can form that get you out and experiencing these things often? Well, maybe you are the kind of person who doesn't like to cancel any sort of events. So you can plan out a bunch of events over the next week, 2 weeks, month with other people, or plan out going to different venues or whatnot, and maybe try to bring other people in as well, so you have someone to keep you accountable. And that's a habit you can build. Like at the start of the week, I do this to help make it so you go out and experience these things that allow you to write songs. And then to make it obvious, you can put your calendar right on the door of your bedroom. So every time you leave your bedroom in the morning, you see your calendar and you can say, okay, what am I doing upcoming days? That day's empty. What can I do to fill it in? That makes it obvious so you can be reminded to it. Make it attractive. What makes it attractive? Well, out in the town, let's say you really enjoy, there's like a local park you really like going to, and you have a hobby of photography, like Brandon does, tying it back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start a hobby project where I take a picture of this park once a week throughout the whole year and do a time lapse at the end of the year.
Yeah.
As kind of like a personal hobby project. Something that gets you out there and you have fun, unrelated necessarily while you're there. And it's attractive. Like, oh man, I've been doing this for 5 months. I've taken a picture every week. I can't miss it this week, so I need to get to the park.
Yep.
Now you have other things motivating you, making it attractive to go to the park. And you know in this location, you're going to be motivated or inspired to create your art because of how it changes and the environment of it. The environment is electric for you. For example, ease, make it easy. Start up maybe try to get a friend who also likes to go on hikes with you or enjoy the park. You can have a group meeting where you have people that you meet at this location the once a week when you meet up. There's a coffee shop down the road that maybe you try out and you like it.
Yeah.
So like meet them at the coffee shop and then walk down to it. So like a brunch or something. Or if maybe the park is close to your work or something else that you do, what else is in the area that's exciting about it, where you can make it super convenient to go to the park either before or afterwards. Once again, this is just a rough example of like, this is a location that inspires you to create. How do you go there more frequently?
Yep.
And then rewarding, what makes it satisfying? Things you can do after you've been there. Well, you have this one, like this, if you take a picture every week, you have a slideshow going on. You can review what you've got so far after every time you go there, so you can see it growing in real time. That's exciting. It's like, oh, you can visually see the progress every time you go there. Or if you have a meeting with somebody at the park or beforehand, if you have like an accountability thing or a mastermind group or whatever, or you meet your other bandmates or fellow artists there, you talk about your music while you're at this location. Afterwards, you can shoot like an email or reminder or whatnot, like, hey, we covered this. I'm really excited about this idea. And reliving it is very rewarding, that excitement that you had while you were there. Or maybe you get the coffee afterwards.
Yeah.
So that the reward is, if I go to the park and I hang out with these people and I get a coffee afterwards, that helps kind of start the next part of my day and caps off the experience.
Exactly.
Or if there's like a tiny ice cream parlor in the corner or whatever. Just
Totally.
small things that can be like, oh, this is the reward for the top of the day.
Yep.
That's just a quick basic example of I'm a songwriter. This place inspires me. I like the way the vibe it gets, watching people, having things happen here. The people I meet here is really important to me. Boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
As convenient as possible, as easy as possible. And, you know, now you have the habit of going to this park every week, and it will help you with be creative and stay motivated and inspired throughout the year.
Exactly.
Depending on what music you create, who you are as an artist, what inspires you, can change. Obviously, it's going to change what you have to do week after week or day after day to stay motivated.
Yeah.
If you're like a metalcore band that has a lot of references to classic horror movies, well, every week have a horror movie marathon or whatever or whatnot, or read up on novels or go and join forums and groups or whatnot to keep you inspired, because that subject matter is what inspired you to make this music, or schedule going to concerts of other artists that do similar things or friends or whatnot. Yeah. That keep you motivated and engaged in it. But the aspects of it that get you excited to do it again and again, do those consistently. Yeah. And instead, consistency is key with it. Yeah.
And I think a big point that you're making here too is that when you go to set these consistent habits or this routine that you're trying to like implement into your life and keep fire under your ass, lack of a better way to say it, is that you're gonna have to refine it, right? Like taking the park example. Let's say that the way that you go to the park though is so frustrating, right? You have to go through like 8 different stop signs and they're all 4 ways, right? And that's just annoying, right? Because like then you have to deal with traffic, and then sometimes people don't follow the rules. Sometimes you're not paying attention and you don't follow the rules. Somebody honks at you, right? That takes you out of it, right? So like maybe you have to find a different way to the park. Maybe you ride your bike to the park. Maybe you could take the expressway this time, you know?
Maybe you carpool with someone you meet up with there and you rotate every other day.
Yeah. And these small things, they all do add up to make a big difference, but those are the things that you're going to have to swap out and see what's going to work for you in the end, and what gets you to that point of euphoria when you're doing these things, right? So just a really important note there is that when you set these habits and you're starting to go through it, do what feels right to you, and sometimes what is most efficient as well, because that can also help you get there too quicker.
And reflect and see what works and what doesn't. As I mentioned when I talked about my process, when I said I first started with my laptop and my interface and that was it, it was really hard for me to stay motivated. I learned and tried things and got a new space and got different types of speakers and hardware and tried this and moved that around. And my studio has gone through so many iterations in the past 2 years that it's existed as a physical separate building. Just being a separate building got me way more motivated than doing it in my house where I lived. So just that one step, trying out that as an experience, super beneficial. How I layer it out, I keep changing. I just changed it 2 days ago, some layouts and whatnot, and I'm really excited about it. Keeps me engaged and motivated. Try something new. It keeps my brain working, like how this workflow changes if I try that or if I do this, and it's going to keep evolving. Motivation is going to keep changing, but it's because of the fact that I love it. And the fact that I know you listening love it, and the fact that I know Brandon loves all like what we're doing right now, that's also a huge part. And the fact that we have fun doing it, that's a huge part of coming back day after day, week after week, doing it again and again and again, and not feeling run out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have just as much, if not more, creativity now than when I started.
Yeah, same.
And I don't see that stopping anytime soon.
Yep, not at all. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point too. I never even thought about it like that, but I mean, looking back, I definitely have more creativity now, and it's definitely more on recall now than it ever has been in my entire life. Like, especially looking back. I mean, even taking stuff as in like, I mean, personally, just for me, like I don't find music theory all that fun, but I mean, I would totally just sit down and watch a video about music theory now. Like, I just think it's creative. It keeps it engaging. And like, I'm like, oh, I can use this eventually as a tool. And that's building onto the creativity thing, but that's also giving me motivation to try to expand on that. Right. So just a small example. So that's a good point though, is I've never been, I don't think as creative as I ever have been than right now. And I hope that that's the same for tomorrow and the day after too.
Yeah. And hopefully it's the same for you as you go throughout your artist journey to make a living doing what you love. part of your artist journey should be listening to us week after week.
Yes,
Thank
it
you
should
for
be.
listening to this whole episode. Yeah.
This was a longer one, and we didn't expect it to be.
No, we expect to be like 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah.
This is going to be
so
like
thanks for bearing
over
with
an
us
hour.
and my tangent that I went on. That was just awful. But
Thanks for sitting down and dining with us.
Yeah.
This was a really fun conversation. Thank you for listening to this full episode. Come back next week. We'll have another episode week after week, every Tuesday. You can follow us on this platform and any other social platform. It really helps support us. Also, share this with any of your musician friends who you think could benefit from just what we have to say, because we want as many people to make a living doing what they love as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the best way we can figure out on how to help people do that.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
With that said, I'm all set.
I'm good
full.
too.
I'm full with this.
I'm full, man. I'm full.
Thank you for cooking with us. Go out, try out this recipe, make it your own, and
Bon appetit.